Hey, it's good to talk to you again. We are right in the middle of making our student portal so that we can do some CRUD, some create, read, update, and delete. And in the last video, I could not remember the term and for this so that we could put this go button up on the same row. So, and you actually need the submit button because when you scan the badge, it's looking for this to hit enter. So what we're going to do is one thing, yeah. So what we're going to do is come over here and do div class equals input group with a hyphen between them, and then we can hit this and move that down there and bring these two up, and now save, and there we go, boom. Now the way I have it, just for quickness, it's going to autofocus right here because I'm assuming that most of the time you're going to want to find a student, and if you want to type one, then you have to go in on this anyway. So the one thing I don't think we really ever figured out was see, this is kind of made to hit the submit button after you do this. So if we do, I've typed them in, so if we do James Grant, and then we scan the button, see, yeah, it submitted the form. So what we want to do then is, this is a bug I wasn't expecting. I didn't think about this. So what we want to do then is go back to the form editor, and let's see here. Let's go to the form editor in the dashboard and go to tools, form builder. And so we have this form and we're going to edit it. And if you look here, you can see that these things, I gave some space in here. So this is order 10, 20, 30, 40. So what we want to do is come here and edit this down so that this one is at 25. And so let's see, save field settings. And I think that worked. It's been a long time since I've done this. So then we can go to students.php. And now if we come here and say Grant Jones and put a balance of 5, then I think we can actually, well, let's see, I don't have another RFID badge, but if we submit this, we'll see that, yeah, it actually did submit the form in the right order, and that's what we want. We want to make sure we don't want it to submit on the third input because they would never get the balance. So, crisis averted. We didn't really need to add that student, but this RFID badge was already used. So, what do we want to do now? So, when we look at this, I'm going to minimize this for a second and maximize this for a second. So, we have the idea of searching for a student, and oh no, we didn't have a Grant. So Smith. Smith, we can search for them, but we can't really do anything with them. We can't really edit them or anything like that. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make this table be able to allow us to edit a student or view a student or do something like that. So we're going to try to make a really flexible page. If we come here to the code and we look down, this is the if not empty search thing. We can see that we have this table set up with this is the heading and these are column names, and then in here we have all the information. So what we want to do is let's add one more, and let's say we're going to use the term edit. I debated if we're going to use the term edit or view. Let's use the term view. I obviously don't know what I want. So what we're going to do here is we're going to make another table cell. And this one is a little different because what we want to do is we want to link to a new page, and we want to tell that new page what student we are trying to edit. And so the way that we want to do that is we're not going to use a button right now. We'll use a link. So if we do href equals, we haven't made this page yet, but we're going to go student. So we have students.php and we have student.php. And so students are multiple, student is one. And so we're going to do this question mark ID equals, and then we'll come back to that in a second. And then we're going to say edit. And so if we were to save this, and we come over here to the right and we snap it, and we come back here and snap this to the left. If I search for Smith now, then we have this little, which I guess I just used the term view, so I'll change it to view. Which actually we don't even really need to put something in this heading up here, so I kind of like it better without it. If we do Smith, then I don't know if I do like it better without it. It doesn't really matter. So you can see if I hover over this that there's a link. And the key is that we actually want to pass the ID onto the next page. So if this is student 8, we want to tell them that we want student 8 in the URL. So what we're going to do is, if you look here, we have this already done for us. We have the ID already being displayed in the row. So all we have to do is paste that right in there. And so now what's going to happen is it's going to redirect to a page called student.php ID equals whatever row we're on. So if I refresh the page again and do Smith, then when I hover over this, let's see here, did I get that right? I don't know if let me refresh the page. So student ID equals 3 equals 8 equals 9. If you can see that in the lower right hand or lower left hand corner of the screen, you can see that we're passing that ID on in the URL. So the next thing we need to do then is come back here and go through the process all over again. Right click, duplicate, come back here, student.php, then we're gonna visit student.php. We'll be taken here, and we want this for admin and manager, and we're gonna say student viewer. Like that. That's fine. We can change that later if we don't like it. So now we have a blank page, and you'll see that if we come back here to this and we click on it, now all of a sudden it knows that we want student ID equals 8. So we're going to at least do the database query on this part so that you can get an idea what's happening here. So what we want to do is, because this page is only made to edit one student, we can come here and say ID equals input get ID. Now where's that coming from? So that's coming from the URL. Whatever we do input get is going to try to come up here in the URL and grab this. In this situation we said ID equals 8, and so we can come over here and assign to the variable ID that we're going to get whatever's in the URL bar for that. So now what we can do is we want to find that student in the database. So we're going to use our triple query thing because we want to know if the student really exists. So I'm going to do student q equals db, go to the database, query, ask it a question, and say select star. We want everything that we know about the student from students, which is the name of the table, where ID equals question mark, and then we're going to put the brackets for an array there, and we're going to say ID. Now, so if I were to make that full screen so you can see it all, we made this query. This query by itself is not actually going to return anything. And so what we want to do now is come back and say student C equals student Q count, because if this student isn't in the database, if it's not found, if that's not a valid ID, if we were to come in here and put 800 and whatever, we don't really have that number in there, so it would cause all kinds of problems. So what we want to know is, does this student exist? Is there a student with that ID? And so we're going to say if student C is greater than 0, then do this. If not, else, then we want to do this. And so what do we want to do? If we find the student, then if there's a student that exists, we want to say student equals student Q first. Okay, so we only want to grab the first student because remember, this is a primary key, so it can only be in the database once, so we only care about grabbing the first one. But if it's not, what would we want to do if we went to that page and that student didn't exist? Well, we would want to redirect to And then the page that we came from is students.php. And then we can say error equals student not found. So we're going to do this first, and then we might get a little bit more creative. So let's do this. Let's come here, and the first thing we're going to do is do student that one. And you'll see we got redirected here because student not found. So there's one other thing that we can do that's kind of interesting. So what if we search for Smith? Okay. So if we wanted to, we can remember this search term here. So let's say that we have search. So let's look at this student's page. When we search for something, we've assigned that variable to this thing called search term. So we go in the database, we find search, and we get the search term. So check this out. So right now, let me just show you. So right now we have this list here. If we come here and for some reason that student doesn't exist, then when we get redirected, we don't have our search results here. So what we can actually do is come in here, and where we're making that URL, we can actually say and search equals, and then we can do the same thing. We can do this search term. So now watch what's going to happen. So when we come over here and we do Smith, then we can see that we click on this guy, and we brought this Smith over here with us, which means that what we can do is on our student page, we can come back here and say, we can do this. We can do search, and we'll do search term equals input get search, because we're going to grab that from the URL. And then we can do this. We can do and search equals, and then we'll put a dot here, and we're going to say search term. And the cool thing about this is if the search term is blank, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I think it'll just show a list of the students, but we'll see what happens. So, I mean, and really the only way that would happen is if you really messed around with the URL bar, and there's not really much of a downside to it. So if you come over here and you say search, Smith or whatever, if we change this ID to something that'll fail, then when we redirect, it picked up the fact that we had already searched for Smith and gave us that search term back. So if I do Hoover, and then I come over here and I click to view one of these, and then I put in an invalid URL there, or an invalid ID there, and I search back, we're back at the term Hoover. So that's kind of slick. It gives us the option to to see what's there. So we're going to do one last thing just to prove that we're at the right place. So when we do this code, we've searched here, and if we did find the student, we got it assigned to a variable called student. So what we can do in here, just for a quick validation, is PHP dump student. And then we will put that. And so now when we come here, you'll see that whatever student we pick, we have their information. Kim Hoover, their balance. We can come here and do Dan Hoover and my balance. And so basically what we've proven is that we have the information we need on that page so we can edit it.